Well, what is it that makes the South spicy? Is it the food? Is it the nightlife, or the brilliance of the man that is the pride of Louisiana when he's not rocking it in the courtroom and running his own law firm and visiting churches all over the world? He's a staple on Court TV as well as a number of other news outlets, killing it on his own podcast and on social media and on Talk 107.3 with Brian Haldane. He is the incredible Macaroni and Cheese Festival hosting Crawdad Boil King, Franz Borghardt. Joined shortly here by a Truth or Derek podcast Hall of Famer, a mere 2 states over, killing it on the food scene in Atlanta, Georgia, and in the courtroom and on social media, on Court TV, CNN, ATL News One, Scripps, and a million other places. When they need great advice, he is the deep digging, tell it like it is, Georgian badass that is Joshua Schiffer, joining us, a very special guest for the first time. He is America's judge in the world of food, and who better? Especially after writing another brilliant book about visiting every state as well as 30 countries in 12 months to try a bite of everything under the sun. You know him from Cutthroat Kitchen, Guys Grocery Games, Tournament of Champions, Bobby Flay, Iron Chef, and everywhere they need great taste. Renowned author and host of the greatest food podcast out there today, Eat My Globe. The incredible Simon Majumdar. Simon, your resume here. I'm telling you, half the show could have been reading what you've managed to accomplish.
Well, that's very kind. That's very kind. You know, I'm getting through a lot of shows at the moment, which is really, really great. And everywhere I go, though, I just use it as an opportunity to meet friends, because we're in this, wonderful, just but little apartment here in LA because we're always traveling. This year we went to the Stans, Uzbekistan, Turkmenistan, all those areas, which was so great. We've been to 106 countries around the world now.
Unbelievable.
And
you know what? I was gonna ask you about that because, listen, I've been watching food judging shows my entire adult life, right? And okay, I can appreciate somebody goes to culinary school. That's not easy. People high grades, tests, this, that, and the other thing. Simon, you are like foot on the ground. Like you were saying, like you won't meet any other food judge who's put feet on the ground in Uzbekistan. Because I saw some of the pictures you were sending back of some of the dishes and stuff like that. Like this is the guy. You are the guy that I want judging my food.
well, though I always say though that there are always people who are better than me. When uh, and now he's a very, very, very good friend, Andrew Zimmern. He's been to far more places than I have, and he's great. So there's always someone, and I believe this, I really do. There's always someone in life, however great one thinks they what is, and there's always someone who you can look up to. You know, and there's places. So I know we were talking. Someone was talking about churches earlier. I was going to be an Anglican priest. That was
Really?
my passion. That still is. To become an Anglican priest was one of my passions, and I went to seminary or theological college, whatever you want to call it, King's College London. I went to all these places, and then I came out of there because what happened? The priests, they were lovely to me, but they said, "We just don't think you can be a priest." And I,
So this is going to
yeah,
be interesting, and Derek doesn't know this. So in a former life, I used to organize large-scale, untelevised food competitions, festivals. We call them festivals.
yeah,
Um, and at a local university, because I'm a lawyer by trade, it was a food competition, and I wanted to know the fairest way of doing a food competition. So at a local university, LSU, they have a sensory services lab where they do food experiments and they do all sorts of cool stuff. And so I visited with the sensory services lab and I said, I have a challenge for you guys. I need to know how to put on a fair, unbiased food competition. It was a total geek out. They gave me a list of criteria for how to do food competition. And it was so counterintuitive. For example, Simon, you're going to love this. For example, all judges have to be blind. They can't see what the other judges are eating. All the food has to be eaten in different orders. because as you continue to eat massive quantities of food, it becomes less fair to the 10th or 15th competitor because your palate is affected as well as your appetite. If it is a boiled crawfish, we do a lot of boiled crawfish in Louisiana. If it's a boiled crawfish,
I love crawfish.
Boiled crawfish competition, the more crawfish they eat, the more the salinity, because it's all salty, it starts to, and I'm just like listening to these scientists tell me how to do an unbiased food. And Simon, we did burger competitions, we did mac and cheese competitions, we did chicken wing competitions where we had 15 to 30 chefs cooking, and we had judges, lay judges, as well as chef judges. And then we did people's choice because the scientists were like, you also need to have a people's choice competition where it's not necessarily overly intellectual. It's just people voting on what they like. And it was amazing. And every time I watch food competitions on television, because you, Simon, for the most part, you get to watch which chef is cooking which food, and you're in real time, you're watching them cook it. I always think back to the competition. All these guys, Alton Brown would love this. All these guys giving presentations, like these scientists, like giving me information on this is how you can throw a real like chili cook-off to where it's fair. And they were very much like, and last thing, Simon, they were very much, I mean, if you want it to be fair, Simon, they would be like, if you want it to be fair, Franz, I mean, assuming you're intellectually honest and you want it to be, I'm like, well, yeah, sure, whatever. The criteria was impossible though, right? Like blind judges, you'd have to have like, they wanted the judges in these chambers, these fortresses of solitude. I'm like, nobody can do that, right? It's, so yes, that former life, Simon, that was what I used to do.
Well, first of all, I want to say hello to Joshua, who's...
Hey, Chef, how are you doing? Sorry I'm late. I had one of those lovely meetings with an accountant, and it may have gone a little bit longer than it was initially planned.
Never a good thing.
No, but I think what we should say about that is, first of all, when you're doing any tasting like that, let's just do does it taste any good? And that's the thing that a lot of people, and you go, that's a lot of the things that people who come in and go, oh, well, what should I do about tasting the food? And I'm on I'm doing guys' grocery games, and there's 3 of us sitting there. And I go, well, does it taste any good? I said, I don't care if they've mixed this with this and they've done this with this. And I go, but it tastes like horrible. I mean, it tastes really bad. And so it doesn't, and you've got to go, well, I don't care what you've mixed with whatever, because it tastes horrible.
That was the issue with fusion cuisine there for that decade.
Well, no, but
fusion's amazing, but some things just don't go very well together.
They
correct.
Wanted the scientists, Simon, Chef. The scientists wanted the judges.
You can just call me Simon, please.
Beautiful. You're going to love this.
Thank you, Chef.
So, yes, the scientists wanted me to blindfold the judges because there's an inherent bias with what you see in relation to what you eat. And their phrase was, you eat with your eyes first. And I'm like...
But that's extraordinary too. So here's the thing. Talking about all of that, and I should let other people talk in, but there are 5 senses we've got, and maybe more, because you can have umami and you can have all of that, but that's a different thing. But say we've got the 5 senses, you've got to use all of them. So actually, when I see the food put in front of me, I go, well, that does look great. I haven't tasted it yet, but this looks, and it could be the most beautiful crawfish, and that could be just laid there and it's gorgeous, or it could be the most fantastic. Yeah, if I go to L'Espinasse, or well, that's gone now, but if I go to Bernardin or any of those restaurants, they were just fantastic restaurants, and those will look fantastic too. But between the two, there are dishes that just look horrible. But when you dive in, they're better than either. because sometimes they don't make it look great, but it's really good. Anyway, that's in.
Sorry,
No, but you're touching on something very good, which is I've also had some really highly composed, beautiful dishes that just fell flat because
Absolutely.
you can
Absolutely.
have the most gorgeous, a very detailed, composed, artistic presentation, and if it still tastes like overcooked it's man, I'm sorry, you overcooked it. You cooked it to death.
Yeah,
It doesn't taste like it's
absolutely.
supposed to taste anymore. Or you
Absolutely.
flavored it some crazy way.
I just wanted to go back a sec because when we were talking about judging and Franz brought up Alton Brown, I'm just curious how you went from I was going to say dropping out, but it sounds like you got kicked out of seminary school.
No, I didn't. I was asked to. So basically, Joshua, I basically stayed the whole time. I loved my time in seminary. I absolutely adored it. But they came to me at some point and they said, "We want you to stay, but we don't think you're going to be a priest." So then I went, and I remember my dean coming up to me. This is 1985, so I'm an old bloke. But he came up to me, the dean, and he said, you'll have a ministry somewhere, but it won't be here." And so,
You have to go to a
which I thought,
C.
no, but he was great, and I started thinking about that, and at first I was very disappointed, but then when I went back, then I started working in publishing. So I was working for Penguin Books, which is a very famous, it started in London, and I started working for them, and that was really great because working on books that, a lot of cookery books, I started working on them. And then what happened was when because I'd worked through them, and I'd done a few companies at this point. I'd worked for a few companies, and they were all great. They were all fantastic. But I went to this very tiny publisher called MQP, which was terrific as well. I loved that place. But after a while, I was just getting worn out. And so what I'd done is I always, always, always had food as one of my backgrounds. I'd always been on, this will see how good you remember this. There's a chat board. That's how bad this is, like in 1999.
MSN message.
Chowhound, the original Chowhound board.
Well, I went on Chowhound in the English or the London bit, and went around the others as well to spend time on there. And then the next one that came out after that was even bigger, was one called eGullet.
Oh, yeah.
And so eGullet was where I went on, and we began to share all these things. And I suddenly began to realize that I knew a lot, or I hopefully knew a lot more than a lot of other people on there. Not everyone, of course, but a lot of other people. And I suddenly realized that I was being able to write and talk about food really well. And it's not supposed to sound,
more than Guy Fieri. You can come out and say it.
No, the guy's very brilliant. He is, and you wouldn't. He's a terrific man, and I was really good at what I did, and so I'd saved up lots of money because I got paid a lot in publishing, and but I put away a lot, and I had this beautiful house in London that I still have with my older brother, and I said to him, I want to go and travel. And I never thought I was going to write a book or anything like that. I just thought I was going to go as much around the world. Then when I came back, I'd get a job in publishing again. And I still remember this. I wrote to one of the people on eGullet, and he, very famous person, when I mention him, he was called Anthony Bourdain. Everyone knows him, of course. And so I wrote to him, and he'd come over to London one time and left this event that he was at and came out for a drink with me and all of that stuff we did. And they closed, what pubs used to be like in London. They used to kind of close all the windows and not let anyone in. And this was, after the pubs had closed. And I wrote to him, and he said, "I think you should go on and write a book, go around the world and write a book." And I thought, oh, and he sent me this quote that I have put on every book I've written, of the 3 books I've written. And he sent me this amazing quote, and I won't pronounce, I'll get it now because it's very, let's say it's very Bourdain-esque.
Yeah,
But
because he hated everything.
No, he was just
no, he didn't. No, that's not fair.
No,
he was passionate about everything.
He was passionate about everything. He was a great man. Anyway,
I loved him. I loved that show.
And he wrote to me, and I put this quote on the front of a proposal, and I sent it off to agents, and I deliberately didn't send it to any agents that I knew. I sent it to lots of other agents to see if it was any good. And I went on this trip. I remember this. I went to 31 countries. And when I got to China, going up the Yangtze River, I got this thing going, oh, it's from an agent. And he goes, "We've taken your book on. Oh, by the way, we've sold it in America. We've sold it in Australia. We've sold it in Britain. We've sold it everywhere." So
the book hadn't been written yet. It was just the format,
the
right?
proposal,
right.
And I'd sent this in, and this agent said, "We've sold your book to," I can't remember even who it was now, and they said, "You're an author now." And I came out of this tiny little internet cafe, and they said, and I said to one of the people I was traveling with, "I guess I'm an author now." And that was the beginning of my journey. And then what happened was I was going to America to do a what do you call it? Not podcast. For the BBC, I was doing a show called The World, and they started which was a great show, and they needed me to mention what my favorite sandwiches in the world was, and I was like, okay,
what are they?
So I went into my favorite sandwich is actually one from Turkey, which is it's mackerel. It's a mackerel sandwich, and people are going, "Wow!" And it is so delicious. You've got to say, and you buy it from these boats by the Galata, by the river, and they serve it to, and it's fresh, and it's anyway. But there's lots of others. I love my po' boys, and I love my little tea sandwiches that they have at afternoon teas. Never high tea. That's a wrong thing. But anyway, so I could just talk about this stuff forever. Anyway, and I did this, and while I was listening to that, my now manager was listening to me, and he was in LA, and he's still my manager, John. And the people from the Food Network were listening to me, and they said, "We'd love you to come in and talk to us about doing whatever." And that was it. So that's how I became all of this. And that's 16 years ago. And so since then, I do have this thing, though, and I'm sure we all do. We have this thing where, despite the fact we're good at what we do, we sit there being really worried, and imposter syndrome. And I've had imposter syndrome. I'm sure. There you go.
You make a good lawyer. We're all cursed with it. Sit in the room with the smartest guys in the world, and they're all unbelievably,
I was gonna say,
fighting their own inadequacies.
Simon shows up to Cutthroat Kitchen, and they bring Jet Tila in. You're like, oh shit, there's a better judge here than I am.
Well, I didn't know Jet at that time. And in fact, I only met Jet during Cutthroat Kitchen once, because twice. Sorry, we were going to compete against each other. That was the only time I ever met him, because he was a judge, and then I was a judge, and we only had one judge. So it was a very different type of show. We had one judge came down, and Jet did it one day. I did it the next, and Antonia did it, and towards the end, they also had Richard Blaze do it, who was great. He's a really, really good friend. And now
Richard used to refer me clients back before he was famous. When Richard was very much beginning here in Atlanta and was cycling through his various restaurants on his way to eventually go to California, he and I had gotten to be friends because I was really into food writing on local blogs and eating and all that. So Richard actually, at the beginning of my practice, referred me a really good client, because obviously Food and Bev has a lot of people that partake in the finer things in life, overtake, we should say. And yeah, Richard is a super nice guy. And I also say the same, another Atlanta one, Alton Brown. Brown is
just missed that point of the conversation off air before we started about how Simon hangs out occasionally with Alton Brown and texts him, and they're like buddies.
So Alton's kid goes to the same little teeny tiny private school I went to, and his B Squared Studios is less than a mile from where I am.
Well,
now.
I am, even though I can say, Franz, you were going to say something though before I come
So I have to ask, because you may be the one time I ever get to ask what I would call a celebrity judge this question. When I'm watching a show where there's a food competition, we're watching about this much of the actual judging, I believe. And I want to know, as a viewer, what are the things I wouldn't know that are happening with the judging process? Like, are you guys judging for hours? Are you judging for, because I know that we're not seeing everything, and we're probably only seeing the most entertaining and interesting parts of the competition. But like, what are the things that the common misconceptions or things that we wouldn't know that happen during a food competition and the judging process?
That's a really interesting question. When I judge, or sometimes when I've been hosting judging, it depends. And that's the honest answer. It depends. So sometimes the judges will speak and everything that they say will be perfect, and we have it there. And maybe they'll say 3 minutes each, but we have to use 20 seconds of each. Sometimes the judges will say 5 minutes of each, and it's fantastic, and we really want to bring that out, but they're just sharing it for the show. So it takes a lot to decide, and that really is down to producers. So it's down to the production. And what people don't realize as well, of course, you have the competition, the people on the competition, you have the judges, you'll have the host, and everyone looks at them. But what they don't realize, if you look at Cutthroat Kitchen, that was about 125 people to do that show.
Really?
So you have all the people who look after the judges, and they bring them. They don't want us to go out to the craft table. They just bring us food, and that happens because we're supposed to be the talent, and I'm using my hands there because I don't, trust me, I really don't consider myself talent of any sort. So we have one person to take care of all of us for that. Then we have all the people who come up with the competitions. Then we have all the people, the wardrobe people, and we each have a wardrobe person, or we'll have one or two wardrobe people going around. Then we'll have all the camera people. Then we'll have the production crew, and each one of the competitors will have their own production crew. Each one of the judges will have when they come down. So we've got a huge amount, and that's why I always say, when people ever say to me, oh, well, we love this and we love that, I go, it's not us. It really isn't us. I mean, it is in the sense that we're on TV and we love, don't get me wrong, I love being recognized and all of that sort of stuff. It's great. But the key is it's the crew. They are so, and I'm not just saying this because I'm on, the podcast and I want to share it all. They are the best. And in all of them, I wonder, because if they're not great, then the show isn't going to work.
The
And that
production
is the
really
key.
suffers. Yeah.
Yeah,
I
so
will-
you've got, yeah.
I will tell you, Simon, and I can't speak for Josh. Josh and I do legal commentary on national TV. And I always tell people the production people behind the scenes are probably the most important part of the entire equation. And those are the guys and gals that I care about their feedback. I'm always flattered when someone says, a viewer says, hey, you did a great job, or you sounded really whatever. If you really want to know where I go to get feedback, I will ask the production people, and they are almost shocked when I ask them, hey, how did I do? Or I'll say, hey, can you give me some feedback? Yep. And they're like, are you sure you want, when they preface it with, are you sure you want feedback? And I'm like, well, yes, I want feedback. And it is just, they are so important and critical. I mean,
well, and they're like a deputy in court. They've seen this 18,000 times, and they're going to see it more tomorrow. Today's just Tuesday, and they're fine doing this today, because tomorrow, guess what? It's going to be Wednesday. And I'm with you, Franz. If the producer, who more times than not, you're never actually going to see in person. It's just literally a voice in your ear. Yep. If they go, that was a really great hit, you really like that, to me, that's the blue ribbon. Because you're right. It's great to be, nice things said about you, but they matter.
When I go on, say I'm doing Cutthroat, whatever show I was doing, Alex versus America or whatever show I'm doing, I'll always go to the producers afterwards. I'll go, was that okay? And they'll go, yeah, it's fine. It's, it's working, fantastic, whatever they say. And we know they wouldn't want you there if you weren't, but I want them to be happy. So, and maybe I think part of that is it's a very British thing as well. We have even more imposter syndrome than I think you've got to go, because we always have that in Britain. But I find that very happy, very grateful to be able to deal with people who are on the crew, because they're, I've filmed some stuff last week. I won't name what we're doing, but we were going around all these people, and what made me feel very happy, I'll just mention this now because I've got I don't know where you can see it there. I had a brain cancer.
Yeah, we were going to talk about that a little bit later.
Yeah, so I just mention it, and everyone ever remember from I always say the lowest, but it's not, the people who drive me around to the people who are the head producers. Every single one of these 150 people on this show, they came up to me and they said, oh, how's it going? What's happening with this? What's happening with this? What's happening? Oh, we love the fact that you're here. We do. Oh, it's so great. And I'm telling you, that makes me feel more happy than just about anything. And it's the fact that the crew all know who I am, all not about me being, talent or whatever. They all know who I am. They all know what's happening. They all know what's going on, and then of course the talent does, of course, people know this when I go and see the show, do the shows, but it's very, 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 what's the word? It just makes me happy. It just makes me very happy.
You know what it is? And I think it's in particular to you. Because like I was saying, why in particular we wanted to have you on. It wasn't just because of, all the 30 countries in 12 months thing, it blows my mind. But you do have a genuine quality to you that comes through on your podcast, and it comes through on the different TV and all that sort of thing. And also, you do, again, you take a little bit of time to explain certain things and all that. Like, again, I keep going back to Cutthroat Kitchen because the brilliance of that show was, because we love Alton Brown. And again, I love you just as much as I love him. The point of that show was for the food to taste like shit. And that's what I loved you, because you take a bite out of something and you get this look on your face. And before you talk, you're like, he hates it, but he's going to try to say something nice, but it tastes awful. Like, you have
sometimes
you have to make chicken nuggets, but you're not allowed to use chicken or breadcrumbs. You get a can of orange soda and some crackers.
Well, you can't see it at the moment, but I've got a picture up behind me here on this thing that I have, and it's from Cutthroat Kitchen, and it's from this chap. I can't even remember what his name was. He was a chef, and he'd made this soup, and I looked at it, and it was thick. I mean, it was so, and I turned it upside down and hung it over my head, and that's basically the picture of me. And I gave him a look, and I said, "I know you wouldn't be able to, but I said, this takes, what's the word? I said, this, is not what you're going to do, is it?" And he said, "No, I wouldn't be doing that." But it was just, And so when you do that, sorry,
Simon,
do you when you're judging? So obvious, I'm a big believer in fail hard. If you're gonna do it. Don't half-ass. Don't pull back. Do it. And especially with something bold. Are there a couple things that pop to your head when I talk about that, where I say that was one, because that's really what I think about with the soup is, I'm going to make this luscious, amazing, thick cream. Oh, I made library paste that you can, stick a spoon and it stands up.
Simon still remembers it's one of the worst meals he's ever
had. Well, that's the thing. Like that, there's something to be said for the memory of the worst, because it is preserved forever.
Well, but it can be that. It could be, and I won't name the name, but there was someone on the very first episode I did of Next Iron Chef, and she had this fish which she took from. It was from the Amazon somewhere. I can't remember. It works, and she decided. Well, I mentioned her now, but she decided to take the scales from the fish and to deep fry them, and then to serve those over the fish.
Little crisps.
So they're like cracklings. They're like crackling. And I thought, okay, but the fish, she cooked beautifully. She's a great chef. But she sprinkled it all with these cracklings. Well, they tasted like glass. They just tasted, and so I ate a bite of it, and I said, but there's no point, because I'm afraid, and I'm saying this now before I said, you have to go out, because if you're serving me this beautiful piece of fish, which is, if you just left it on its own, you'd be in the top 1 to 3 people, but you serve this, and I said, and quite frankly, it's disgusting. And I think the Americans weren't used to people going, it's disgusting. But I said, it is. And I said, I'm afraid I'm going to taste all the others, but you serve this thing with, glass on top of it, or, scales. And it's horrible. So I'm afraid you're going to go home, and I don't care how badly the others do. You're going.
I've already made up my mind.
So Simon,
sorry.
Sometimes, so in Josh and I's professional career,
Yeah.
Oftentimes what we're doing as criminal defense attorneys is like Cutthroat Kitchen. It's wonderful. It's wonderful when we have clients that look innocent. We have great facts, but the truth of the matter is, oftentimes I feel like I'm trying to make gourmet mac and cheese out of cardboard. And I have often said of my profession and of attorneys that I'm watching, attorneys will do something and half the room will say, oh, that's the crazy, I can't believe they did that. That's stupid. And then the other half of the room is like, if that works, they're going to be the most brilliant attorney in the room. And the line between brilliance and silliness, it's sometimes very thin.
or just non-existent. There are a couple dishes I very closely went into food rather than law. I used to write on those early Chowhound boards and EGOT, and that whole early internet, late 90s, early 2000s.
Would I be able to ask what your username was?
JG Schiff or J-Boy 1976. Like I literally wrote it. There was one called Atlanta Cuisine
I'm not just saying this. I think I remember seeing you because I was on there as
Atlantic
Simon
Cuisine
Majumdar.
Yeah, it was awesome. And I come from a foodish family, and I dedicated my first 10, my 20s was the food universe exploded, and I was at the right age where I was the fanboy for, like, in law school for me was when Food Network started showing the original Iron Chef from Fuji Television only at 11 o'clock at night. And the internet was reasonably new. We started up with the original fan pages until the law firm Morrison and Forrester, known colloquially as MoFo, sent us all nasty cease and desist. And we're like, we're a bunch of 20-year-old food nerds that think that this is awesome, and you're squashing us. And they didn't realize exactly how electric the connection with Iron Chef was to this very baby food media universe. And then when it exploded, it was unbelievable. From 2000 to 2010, the food space, it evolved into something never been before. Like when I was a kid, the best public or the best food television media was like the Gourmet Chef, who had a really sad ending and it was PBS. But there was this very small amount of media. Then we got into the heyday of Food Network in the 2000 to 2010, 2015. And now it looks like we've kind of peaked a little bit. My question, all that to say this, where does food culturally kind of go from here? We now have chefs who are legit rock star A-level celebrities, where Bobby Flay walks into a room, 99% of people are going to know who he is. They couldn't necessarily tell you what he even cooks, but they're going to recognize his fame and celebrity. Where does the food universe, how does it move forward?
Well, it depends. I mean, again, it's a very wide church, So if you have people on TV who are coming along and they just want to be what do you call it, a contestant on the show, that'll be for them. And if they think, oh, this is good and I could do this, they could move on to the next, and maybe they'll come, and we've seen this, they go, oh, that was great, and they maybe get invited to be a judge next time, or they get invited to be whatever. So that happens. A lot of them just want to do the show because it helps them in their own business. They just want to go, and people say, oh, we saw you on that. But what we have got now, I think, and this is the key, and it's the key for everything in food and all of this, the people who starred on the Food Network were really fantastic chefs anyway.
Oh,
yeah,
that's been one of my, I think, the disconnects recently is there are some food related celebrities where I look at them and go, hold on, I don't know how good an actual cook you are. You're like, you don't have that soul that someone where, if you watched Emeril Lagasse talk during his first 5 years on TV, the guy just breathed everything food and everything Cajun.
So that is what I struggle with food competitions. What I struggle with is I find myself, Simon, often thinking, okay, this is fun to watch, but nobody really cooks this way. Like when it's time,
in 30 minutes,
yeah. So if you want to get me glued to a TV, any kind of like Anthony Bourdain, Parts Unknown, or what was the other show? No Reservation.
No Reservation. Then Zimmern did a bunch of bizarre food travel stuff.
I love food travel because I can see myself going to Italy. I can see myself going to LA and saying, okay, where are the places Simon would eat if he had 3 meals in LA? And they don't have to be like bougie. They don't have to be expensive.
No.
The food competition shows are entertaining for me, but where you lose someone like me is it's like, okay, like Restaurant Wars on Top Chef. Okay, it's fun, it's entertaining, but that's not what I'm interested in as someone who loves food.
But what happens there is we now have, it used to be Bravo with Top Chef and Food Network, of course, with a lot, and that's great. But we now have a wide variety of television stations. So they'll all have something. You'll have CNN or you'll have whatever, and they will be the ones that'll do, sorry, something's, we'll have, those, and they will do, like Steve, what's his name, who was on the TV, the Italian chappie who was on, the actor whose name is escaping my head right now.
Tucci.
Oh, yeah,
right?
Stanley Tucci did. Yep. Well,
Yeah,
we've seen a
so-
number of those. I think, what's her name from Gloop did one where she talked about food.
Well, she was
Yeah,
Mm,
not my forte.
not my cup of tea. And
Yes.
didn't she do one with the guy who Mario, who was anyway.
We had to cover Mario's life about 2 years ago when he was in I want to say, was it Boston or New York, where he had run into some issues. Even though I will say this about Mr. Battaglia, Miss Bastianich, one of my 5 or 10 most memorable all-time meals was at the original Babbo in New York, where believe it or not, Michael Stipe was living upstairs. And I was in New York for a couple of days, and someone had told me, go to Babbo and you can get in if you show up and have a bar seat without a reservation. And I'm like, all right. So show up at 5, and Michael Stipe walked out of the apartment that is above Babbo, where apparently that was like the cool guy crash pad, and walked out and was moving some stuff into a car, but then came and we had a very nice, brief conversation. And, he was definitely there for Babbo. And I'll tell you, the food at Babbo, that was exceptionally finely done.
I used to eat there a great deal. And in fact, here's one of my stories, because this goes back to E-Gullet and all of those. The woman who ran all of the pastry and all of the thing that I forgot, her name is going from my head again. This is all to do with this brain. But she was on E-Gullet and Chowhound, and her father was the man who founded Mad Magazine. And but she used to work at I've forgotten her name now, but she used to work at and Mario Batali used to send her to Italy to find the best Amalfi lemons. He used to send her anywhere in the world, but she was the daughter of the man who invented Mad Magazine. And I remember her telling me this when I was on E-Gullet. She sent me a private message. And she said, she goes, oh, I don't tell too many people about it, but yes. And so I used to go. And the other thing I remember about Babbo, they had a fantastic bartender. Now, not just because he made great drinks, but he could have a proper chat with you while he made these drinks. And I always used to I didn't have any other drink. I always had a London Dry martini with a small splash of vermouth, and always, never, ever, and this is one thing I'll share with you, never a olive or a no.
Simon, are you one of those guys who doesn't like olives?
No, I like olives, but I don't like them in a drink. What you have to have for this is you have to have it with a twist. And that's the true thing of a martini. And it is something I'm craving right now, because I've only been able to have one, which was on my birthday earlier this year because of this thing. But,
well, I'll ask you now, as an inveterate, and I come from a gin drinking family, and I had to give it up for a variety of reasons many years ago. Now, so a few quick gin questions. Are you an 80 proof guy or a 90 proof gin guy?
80 proof.
80 proof gin. All right. When you talk about a splash of vermouth, I was raised in a family where the vermouth bottle was opened across the room, you pointed it at the glass of ice cold gin, and then you put the cap back on the vermouth. That was the
Do you know where
appropriate
that comes
amount of
from?
vermouth.
Do you know where that comes from? That comes from the Savoy in London.
Ah,
And they used to open the thing, and they never put vermouth in theirs, although I always go in and ask them because I know it'll rile them up, and then I don't have the gin. But what they would do is all the servers, they would put the bottle there, and they would bow before France to the bottle, and then they would come back, put the cap on, and then they would just make But the best gin martini. And I'm not just saying, oh, it's the best, blah, blah, blah. It's known as the best, is Duke's Hotel in London, which is just behind. Yeah. And
read about, yeah.
And I go there all the time. I'm back in London, and
did you when you were on eGullet, did you know the guy Fat Bastard that was the lawyer in New York that eventually wrote the book about how to become a regular places? He really gave up practicing law to go full bore
Stephen
food.
Shaw.
Yeah.
Stephen Shaw. Yeah, I knew him.
Which his first book never got the play that anything Bourdain never did, but is absolutely one of the best food books out there, because he talks all about, the restaurant industry from just a different perspective and a different eye in a really wonderful, exploratory way. Like it was a really cool book because he made no bones about the fact he was just a food fan. He was a true foodie that could have done anything else, but really loved the idea of restaurants and community.
Was that the character in the book? Fat Bastard?
No. That was his name. His tag.
Got
it. All right. And that was that was in Kitchen Confidential, right?
No, that was in. He may have been in. I don't think he may have been, but he had his own book.
Yeah.
Okay.
His own
Jason,
book.
You look like you're about to say something, Jason. He's like,
no, I wanted to go back a little bit because this is fascinating. Yeah. There was a few things we really wanted to get in because especially with all the stuff, and I was gonna say with the drink and all that sort of thing, but just before that, when you were saying with all these food competitions that you've judged, you've seen how everything works and all that, they seem to use that 30-minute time limit. Is there a dish that you can make? Like if Simon has 30 minutes to make dinner or make a lunch for himself, what does he make?
I just make an omelette, and a good omelette. And no, but it's true. If you just made an omelette, and I mean a really good omelette, I mean we're talking about, then
creamy folds of curd on the inside of just those Japanese omelets where they cut them open on the top and they split open. Don't put the gravy on it, but the egg is beautiful.
So that would be, because I cook things, but when I'm going into the kitchen is my space of peace. So I want to go in there for a long time. I want to go in there. I'm coming back after doing my shows, or I'm coming back after doing, I do a huge amount of events. We've got one coming up in October. Well, again, it was about this thing from Oligo Nation, and I love going to those. I love doing those events. I go and support all these people who I know. I mean, and I get paid by everyone, but I love doing those, and I love doing demos about whatever. I do a lot of Indian demos because, hence the name Majumdar. It's actually an Indian name. My father was very Indian. He looked, and when you see me, you don't really see it. But if you see my older brother and my older sister, they're much more Indian looking than I am. And so when I'm in the kitchen, which is a tiny little kitchen, it's right here, it's about the size of a postage stamp. But
I think I saw it. I think you cooked on one of Guy's shows during the pandemic.
That was it.
Yeah. So that's weird to say I've seen your kitchen.
Hey.
It's tip of the iceberg for Creepy and Derek. Tip of the iceberg.
Well, let me ask this,
but
because I know we're running out. We're running out because I've got a hard 6 day. But here, if there is the Simon on a pinch dish, where you need to do the 30-minute, I need to impress someone. I got to make something that I'm gonna nail every time, that I'm good with, but that is, something impressive. Where are you going?
where am I going, or what am I cooking?
Yeah,
What are you
well,
cooking?
yeah, but kind of both. Like, what kind of dish comes to you and go, okay, this is one I'm gonna knock out every single time.
Yeah.
I'm very so the first thing that I would cook would be a chicken tikka masala, which is a very British dish. It is not an Indian dish. It was created in Scotland, and I love that. And you make the tandoor out of the chicken, and you mix the cream and the butter. That's
So
beautiful.
Americans view chicken tikka when they think Indian food. That is the staple. Chicken tikka
Yeah.
masala is the staple Indian food that most
But
Americans think
never,
of when
it
they.
has never, ever, ever, when you go to India, they never have it. Um, they don't have it anywhere. It's created in Scotland by a Pakistani restaurant owner who I went to meet. He's now passed away. But if you want me to go for my own meal, my own last meal, for want of a better word, I would go to the great fish and chip shops up north in England, and I'd have some curry sauce, some mushy peas, the best piece of haddock, the greatest chips, and I'd go. Anyone else, I'd bring my lovely wife along because she's everything that I have ever dreamed of. But I would just go. That's it. And buy
All
that.
right. So very quick, and then I hate to run by. So my wife briefly worked for a very famous, now imprisoned worldwide financier who had purchased the island and people of Antigua, which is a small island in the Caribbean. And he had extraordinary power over this island. And we went down there and stayed basically as the only two people in a very fancy resort for several days. And I met my hero on this trip. And this is 10, 15 years ago. I met a British man who had come to Antigua for whatever and stayed. And he was the happiest man in the world. Every morning he got up and went fishing. And there was more fish than you could possibly imagine. This little island, middle of the Caribbean. It's beautiful. Then he would come back around 11 o'clock and go to his permanently parked little kiosk, food truck kind of thing that was set up. And he sold two things. He sold curry, where he had a very basic British curry in a tin box that someone had taught him to make a long time ago. And that was it. It was going to be his curry, or whatever fish he'd caught, he turned into fish and chips. And so every afternoon he sold curry and fish and chips out of a tin shack on a beach in Antigua, and then got up in the next morning and did it all over again. and I talked with him for a couple hours, and I was like, you really have it all figured out. You live in paradise, you eat your favorite food, and you get to cook. And he just totally had it set up. Every night, him and the wife made the big pot of curry, packed it up, then he went fishing.
I love that.
How can you go wrong? I hate to run. I love Simon. I can't think enough. I'm so sorry I'm late. I'm so sorry I got to run. I would talk with you forever because I eat restaurants like they're going out of. If there's a city, I want to eat in all the restaurants, all of them. I want the crappy ones. I want the awesome ones. I want the lady on the side of the road cooking the thing out of the bucket where you're like, what's that? That's what I want. That's what I want to eat.
Gas station food.
Gas station food. An undiscovered paradise.
If Josh has to go, I just wondered, Simon, if we can keep you for 5 more minutes, because there was just.
Of course you can. You can keep me forever.
Thank you so, Simon. I would love to follow up and talk with you again. Thank you so very much. Just unbelievable. So thank you.
Of course. Take care. No, what I was saying, all those meals. The thing is that for all the great food, and don't get me, I go to the best restaurants I've been to, all the Parisian, all the Italian, all those great restaurants in Spain, Echevarri, all those restaurants I've been to, or and they are wonderful. Don't get me wrong, they're fantastic, and some of them aren't, but like Mugaritz in Spain is horrible, but all these places are, but some of them are fantastic. But when it comes down to it, what I would rather have to happen is to be sitting with my wife and chatting over, fish and chips. Or my wife is a wonderful woman originally from the Philippines, and they have, and she's a lawyer, and so they have, the most amazing food in the Philippines. And you taste that, and you're just going, just just give me and her this time to be eating this food, and I'll be happy.
Well, first of all, I can tell you, your wife is delightful because her and I went quite back and forth quite a bit when we were trying to figure out what to talk about. And I know we're having a blast. No, she was
a lawyer.
incredible. She's like, yeah, Simon wants to do this. He likes this. He likes it's just an absolute delight. But I know the one thing she said that you like to touch on is what's going on with your with the whole brain thing. So what as far as your quality of life goes, when does this kind of come into your life, and how do how do you deal with it on a day-to-day basis?
Well, I had the surgery about 2.5 years ago.
Right.
And they decided. So first of all, I just want to mention an event that's coming up on the August. You can see where I'm going. Just coming up in October the 29th in LA. It's got two of the tournament champions, Brooke and Maylin, cooking, and it's going to be at Scopa, which is the other person who's been in all those shows, and it's Antonia Lafaso, who's one of my favorites.
Love her.
So we're going to her restaurant. We're having all these people. We're selling the tickets out really quickly now. So if anyone is listening to that, and it's not for me, it's not, none of the money comes to me. I'm fine. It's going to this thing called Oleo Nation, which is great. So if anyone's ever listening and wants to come to that, they really should. But what I've done is I've found out, as if I didn't know it already, my wife is just the fantastic carer. Because what people don't realize is when I first had this, I went in for 2 surgeries, which were very, I mean, I don't really know about them, but they were very hard, bad surgeries, or not, tough surgeries. Then I had to go through radiation, which was like 46 times of my radiation, which was very tough. And then I had to go through oncology. And the good thing is, not necessarily the right thing, but the good thing is that this oligo, it doesn't implant itself into the spine or whatever. It just is on its own. So, I have that. And you could probably tell from the way I'm talking, and I'm missing some things, that it's attached to my speech bubble.
No, honest to God, I think this whole thing's been perfect. I mean, you're like, I can't remember this. I can't remember this. I've had a shitty memory for like the last 20 years. I can't remember.
I haven't had brain cancer, and I'm pretty much the same. So there you go.
Well, as well, and I'm 60, so add that all together, and it's but so I have this thing, but I'm still doing shows because. I told all the people from different shows that I had this, obviously, because I wanted them to know about it. And they do the right things. They have me doing the as a judge. They bring me back. They want me to go back when I do the next judging. So in between, I can either sleep or whatever, because I have that. And so what happens to me? The truth is, if I'm lucky, I have 11 or 12 years. If I'm unlucky, I have till tomorrow. But that's true of everybody.
Yeah.
So I don't worry about that. I just worry about spending time with my lovely wife and all of that, and my family back in England. And I've got a great house back in England, in City Road area, and so from that point of view, I'm fine. The only good thing is now, and I just tell everyone, I have to fly, and it's not just because I have to fly first class everywhere because I need to put the seat. And I always go, well, it's the truth, I've got to
Yeah.
put the seats down, and I've got to. And so if anyone's ever, I just go, oh, well, I won't be able to come and do it then. I just say, I'm really sorry.
I need first
And
class. When I
to,
get there, because of the brain thing, I could only get a brand new Cadillac Escalade to drive me around in.
well, I do. I actually do get. I mean, one of the things I do have now that I'm not a celebrity, but I'm relatively well known, and so wherever I go, people are always sending a car and a driver and all of that. So that's fun and it's nice. But no, my real thing is I love food, as we all do. I can tell. I just want to say, I'm coming down to New Orleans. My wife and I haven't planned it yet, but that is my favorite eating city in the US by far.
You could
bar
eat.
none.
You could eat. There's so many good restaurants.
Oh, so many.
And you will only be able, depending on how long you go, you could go to I live an hour away from New Orleans. I could go there every single weekend and eat at one restaurant, and I would only scratch the surface on and it's just a wide berth of good food. Oh.
Well, we go to what do you call it? We'll go to Toops, which is a great thing. Then we'll go to Revel, which is a friend of mine who makes the most amazing drinks and is head of the American Cocktail Association. And then we go to where we go? Oh, we'll go to town. We'll go to Coops, or we'll go to Parkway Tavern, or we'll go to. Trust me, I know everything in.
So Simon is hitting on something that I love about travel. Is I will sit there and scrutinize. Okay, I'm going to LA and I have 3 meals.
Yeah.
Where am I going to go for my 3? Derek and I are going to Las Vegas in the near future.
I was just going to ask him that.
And it's like you're sitting there and you're like, what would I eat if I could never go there again? And it's there's no right answer, but it's so much fun to sit there and play the game of fantasy restaurant of, okay, where do I want to go and what do I want to eat when I go there?
Well, the first place is outside the Strip, which would be Lotus of Siam, which is considered one of the best Thai restaurants in the country. I don't think it's as good as we have a restaurant here called Jitlada, which does the northern. Anyway, we go and have the meals there, and she's great. But Lotus of Siam, I mean, but the thing is, all those restaurants I wouldn't go to many on the Strip because they're all bad versions of the restaurants they want to be.
Yeah, like you're right. The Gordon Ramsay burger for $60 that's jammed in the bottom food court of the Flamingo is probably not the Gordon Ramsay burger that
I've been to Gordon Ramsay's original restaurant in London, which is great. It has 3 stars, and actually the food it's a little bit dated now, but his food is good. Unfortunately, he's now opening these restaurants that are becoming. He's now moving down because he's got to, and he's making a great deal of money and all that. But when he's good, Gordon Ramsay is very good. But the thing about him having arguments in Hell's Kitchen, he never had that in the British versions of the show. He was just a really good guy, and then he's obviously done it in America to create some stuff, but.
Oh, I could pick Simon's brain.
Simon,
please, Simon, do us a favor. Please think about the places you would eat in Vegas and tell Derek, maybe communicate with him off to the side, because I would love to know the off the strip places. There are some on the strip places that I love. But
there's some, the best steakhouse is at Circus, and everyone's going, what?
Really?
Yeah, and it's the best steakhouse, better than the old steak, whatever it's called. I can't remember.
Golden Steer.
Golden Steer?
Steer, which is
Simon,
awful.
Simon, when we
if you-
decided to go to Vegas 3 months ago, we tried to book Golden Steer and it was full. And we were like, this is horseshit.
Yeah.
It's impossible that it's booked 3 months ahead of time.
No, well, now because so many people are watching TikTok or whatever, they're going.
Yeah.
But I will tell you, the best steakhouse, and there's no other reason to go to this place, of course, because it's Circus. But if you go to the steakhouse there, which has been there forever and ever, they have two things. One, they'll if any of the other steakhouses close or blah blah blah, they'll have people come in to work for them, and they're very good. But they will, if you go there, it's just exactly as it should be. I don't know if you know what that means, but if you come to LA, there's lots of those steakhouses. We're actually going to one next week, I think, or whatever, Musso and Frank's, which created the martini where it's in a sidecar, with the martini in there, and then you have an empty glass and you pour it in from your sidecar, and that's a very famous way of drinking the martini. But Musso and Frank's, it's called, and that's the place that all the agents were. It's where, if you watch Tootsie or whatever it was called with Dustin Hoffman, that's where they were sitting having their drinks, and it's a beautiful old style place. But if you go to, that's the only thing I'm telling you. Go to Circus and go to the.
I believe you. I believe
100%. I believe you. All right. For more Joshua Schiffer, maybe you need advice. Maybe you need a lawyer, or maybe you were looking for a steakhouse that was fully booked up for the last 3 months. Check him out on Twitter at LawyerSchiff, on Instagram at LawyerSchiff, or at www.jdgrouplaw.com, or reach out to me for another spoonful of Franz Borghardt. Check him out on Twitter at Borghardt Law, on Instagram at Franz Borghardt, and for legal stuff at www.borghardtlawfirm.com. And for more of the great Simon Majumdar, watch him on pretty much every food competition show there is. He's a great judge. Check out his amazing podcast, Eat My Globe, on Twitter and LinkedIn at Simon Majumdar. And for everything, including the great recipes, visit www.simonmajumdar.com and check him out October 29th in LA at Scopa with Antonio Lavasa, raising money for a great cause. Gentlemen, thank you so much. That was absolutely incredible.
Thank you. This was great.